Good morning. It is about 7:30. I'm on my way to the gymnasium. But I think today's daily meditation for YouDaimonia is going to be about this idea of life phases. I've noticed lately there's a lot of people who I don't maybe let me go back. It's not a lot of people. There's this culture building around this idea of nostalgia. And I don't think that nostalgia by itself is necessarily bad or, a sin or anything like that. But, okay, I guess I'm going. But I do think it's very interesting that we've got these lines of clothing built around like the 80s and the 90s. We've got this huge resurgence of remakes from video games to movies, comics, etc. And there's this real culture that seems to be building around this idea of nostalgia. Like, go back to your childhood in the 90s, playing your N64 on those cube TVs that were had a 15-inch screen, right, and weighed 100 pounds, and was wood grain texture. And the thing is, we can't get our past back. It doesn't, I would love to go back and replay Banjo-Kazooie on the N64 for the first time again and re-experience it for the first time. And I can go back and I can replay all these old games that I'm nostalgic for, and they're still very fun, but it's a different kind of fun when you go back through and you're familiar with them, or when you go back and rewatch movies. I would love to watch Interstellar for the first time all over again and just weep at the beauty and the awe that it brought me. But I can't. We have these phases in our life. We're filled with life phases, and it's okay. We need to acknowledge them. We should write about them, and we should talk about them and think about them, and we should embrace them as part of a previous version of ourselves. And I think one of the most constructive versions of this is this idea around our addictions, right? People are well, you're not really I've heard this before, and it's not a very nice conversation to have. But I've had people before who are in Alcoholics Anonymous tell me, well, Lucas, since you didn't go through AA, and you still drink non-alcoholic beer, and you do all these other things, you're not really a recovering alcoholic. And I call myself a recovered alcoholic. I'm not going back. I have no intention of going back. I don't feel tempted to go back. Just like when I quit cigarettes, 14, 13, however many years ago, I smoked 3 packs a day. In my 13 years, never once, after quitting cold turkey from 3 packs a day, never once have I felt compelled to go back and smoke again. Not even a little bit. And it's the same about alcoholism for me. I don't feel compelled to go back or to drink. I don't feel tempted to go back and drink. It doesn't matter how big of a terrible day I've had. It's a former version of myself. Just like a caterpillar in its chrysalis can't go back to being a caterpillar, and a butterfly can't go back to being a caterpillar or a chrysalis. I'm in the same spot. I have evolved to a new version of myself that is above this previous version. And I have no desire and no intention of going back to a previous iteration of Lucas. We have these phases in our lives, and we can't go backwards. We must go forwards. We can look back with fondness or shame or whatever emotion on a previous iteration of ourselves, but we shouldn't dwell very long in those memories because they're not constructive. Whether they're positive, maybe the time you lost your virginity, or the first time you fell in love, or the first time you watched a movie or played a video game, or or some, the last Christmas you spent with your grandparents. Whatever that fond memory is, they're great to go back and visit, but we shouldn't spend much time with them. Just like we shouldn't spend much time dwelling on shameful memories that we have too. Like some of the awful things that I did when I was an alcoholic. I don't remember a lot, but I do have some memories and I'm ashamed of them. But I'm not going to go back, and it's not going to be constructive. It's going to be destructive for me to go back and spend a lot of time on them. But it is important to periodically go back because it helps remind you and to reinforce your current version of yourself. And when you've moved out from previous iterations of the self and you've moved forward into a new quote unquote evolution, a new phase of yourself, we don't go backwards. We can't. So I think it's honestly destructive to live an overly nostalgic lifestyle. You cannot go back to being a child. You cannot go back to being a teenager. You cannot go back to being, you in your prime, in your 20s, if you're 50 or 60. You can't go back to those previous versions. If you're paralyzed, you can't go back to being a fully mobile version of yourself. And I think it's constructive for us to visit our past and to have moments, but I think it's destructive for us to obsess about our past and to try to chase that.